Cool. Absolutely. All right, welcome aboard. All right. Well, actually, we are really happy to have you guys here because there's so much that you really do offer, and we're going to have exceptional title services. So I think that's really cool. And you should all really dive into what they have because you don't know what you don't know, honestly. And I think you should really do like a massive tutorial with everybody for the stuff that'll blow their brains out.
Yeah, we don't want to load a whole.
You should. You should. Seriously. That's how a lot of people died in like these concrete buildings. Everybody dumped all this concrete on them. But this is meant to disappear. This is meant to expand.
Okay.
So I want to talk about something that has to do with connective selling. So you've all heard some of what I talk about and what I've done and in real estate and where I've gone to as far as achievements. But what I really had to pay attention to was how was I doing it? And so I've been working on, if you guys don't know, I'm really working on getting into corporate coaching, a lot of things to help people get to next level. And how does that happen? So as I started to deconstruct everything, I was really wanting to know, how am I making this happen? And I've gone through and put this presentation together, which I'm constantly adjusting and tweaking, so your feedback for me is necessary. So please, I really want to hear from you what you got out of it, what your thoughts are, what could be added, what could be improved on, and what can also be touched on further. Because as an audience and as my peers in this office, you're going to help elevate me the same way I'm looking to elevate you, okay? And that is through connecting. So I really want to drop on you, as I'm talking to you, pay attention because I'm so purposeful in connecting to you on the same level. I'm not talking above, I'm not talking below. I really want to connect with all of you, my audience, my clients, my friends, my family, so that we can have real relationships together and they're not isolated. They're not distancing. Because what do we do when someone seems too good for us? We check out. Exactly, right? Or we talk shit about them behind their back, or all of that. That's what we do naturally. So I really want to hyper-focus on these things because this is how I think, and this is how I make things happen. But I don't make them happen for me. It's just that when we're in the service business, it's about how do we serve and what's the problem that we're solving. I'm in real estate. If I was in the restaurant business, I'm solving somebody's food problems. They're hungry. And I'm also incorporating an experience behind it so I can get my clients back, right? Same thing with real estate. How do you connect so that not only do we have people call us back when, hey, it's been 4 years, I'm actually getting relocated, you did an amazing job, I want you to work with me, and you haven't even talked to that person in 4 years. Shame on you if you didn't, but that'll happen if it's memorable. And same thing with restaurants and all of these things, and a great movie, you'll tell your friends about it, and how do things all of a sudden have organic reach, right? It's all through connecting. And so the things that I really want to talk about, because so few people talk about this, and I'm really working to explore a niche in this business, which is what shapes you. So we all have a story when we go into a house, when we meet a new client at a coffee shop, at a restaurant, whatever it is. What's the story that we've already told ourselves before we walked into that meeting, right? What's your internal game? Who are you? Who are they? And those are really the big premises for me that I want to focus on, because I can tell you everything you want to know about selling a house. It really doesn't matter if it doesn't connect to you and you don't know how to apply it. So this is really the application behind moving to the next level. And everything starts with a story. What's my story? For those of you that know me on a basic level, don't really know me, okay, I might be here and I might sell a bunch of houses and I might keep achieving in real estate, but why? Like, for what purpose? What reason? What's driving me? And if I start telling you my story, when I was 10 years old, I was selling newspapers. I was door knocking apartment buildings. That's where I was. I was with my best friend, Lauren. His dad worked for the Edmonton Journal in Canada. We'd go out in the morning and we'd go bust into apartment buildings and we'd go knock on doors and we'd give a pitch. And I was doing that at 10. So was I reluctant growing up to talk to strangers? Absolutely not, because that's what I knew. Also, if I wanted to spend time with my dad, I'd have to go to work with him because my dad was always working, 5:30 in the morning till 11 something at night. Because in Canada, the way the seasons are, in summer, the sun almost doesn't set. We were so far north. So my dad would be gone. And if I wanted to have time, I'd have to go to work. So again, I was knocking doors, I was pitching people, I was learning about people, all these things I didn't even know were shaping me. But I have all of those experiences out of, one, I wanted to be with my buddy and go knock doors, and the other one is out of necessity because I wanted to hang out with my dad. And that's the only way I could do it. And that was my story. I started in real estate at 23, not even knowing that I was armed with all of this stuff. And what was the first thing that I did in real estate? I went and I knocked doors. What's the first thing I did in real estate when I moved here? I went and I knocked doors. I went to every bank you could possibly think of and talked to every single mortgage broker. That's what I did, right? I've helped thousands of families. I've made hundreds of thousands of phone calls. And again, I never really deconstructed what was I doing. I was just doing it because inherently that was part of my DNA. It was what I was used to. I didn't know who was or who wasn't. It was just what I was doing. So I had to start learning, what am I doing and why am I doing it? And what does that mean for everybody else? Because we're all so different. So before I get into how are we made up, my dad drilled two things into me. One, sky's the limit. I never really understood what that meant when I was growing up. Sky's the limit, sure, yeah, it's exponential, whatever. But then as I started to grasp, okay, I don't really have any limits. So why do I have all these limiting beliefs, right? When I started to put that together for myself, why am I holding myself back? And I didn't understand the distancing language that I had internally versus what my dad always told me. But I didn't have that connection until I finally had that connection. And then we can do anything we want and we're limitless. I might not be flying to Mars, right? But within reason. The other thing that he told me was go out every single day like you're broke. And by a show of hands, how many of you have heard of or received a paycheck that made you go, I don't have to work for another, I'm going to take time off, right? Right? You can be honest. But my dad, every single day, because he understood his responsibilities, because he grew up post-recession era, he just went out every single day because he grew up in a shotgun apartment where his bedroom was a curtain divide and his mom passed away early. And his dad was a poor shoemaker. So my dad, no matter what he had, his story was, it doesn't matter what I've done, I have to go out. So the reason I want to talk about the internal game is because you've already seen me talk about this, right? Who can go into a $10 million listing presentation and just go kill it and not worry that it's 10 million bucks, right? And then I talked about the other part where who can go sell the $182,000 condo and everybody raises their hand. And the lovely slide of me is like, what happened on the way? What stopped you? So that's so much of what I want to talk about, because I don't give a shit if I tell you all the tools to use or what you can do in the process of excelling your real estate career. If there's no correlation between where you see yourself going and every single tool in the toolbox being given to you, how are you ever going to get there? So the internal game is seriously everything, because we will talk ourselves into doom. We will talk ourselves into gloom. We will talk ourselves off a cliff. We will talk ourselves into paralysis. We will talk ourselves in circles. And it's all designed to keep us safe, because seriously, who wants to be uncomfortable every day? How often do you want to be made to feel like this sucks, I don't know where I'm going, what I'm saying? But honestly, if all of you remember when I first started, getting up here and talking and all of these things, how I am today versus how I was, and I've studied all of my tape, I know what I sound like, I know what I'm doing, I'm on radio, right? I'm working on my craft so that I can be up here and connect with you. But if I just came up here for the very first time and tried to make sense of all of this, I'd be going like this too, like, why didn't it work, right? So what's putting me in front of you? What's the story that I'm carrying? Do I finally believe I'm good enough to actually give you guys information, even though I've succeeded in real estate from the first year I ever got into real estate? And I didn't even believe that I was successful in real estate, no matter how much I had done. Where are all those disconnects? And how are you playing with your own mindset? And what are you listening to when you talk shit to yourself? And who wins in the end, right? So as you start to go through all of that, what are you telling yourself? So it's the internal vault. All those stories, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I don't love me, I've never listed a $10 million house before. Whatever you're telling yourself, you're right. You're absolutely, positively, unequivocally right. Because nobody else can tell your story. Even if you've got 10 people supporting you all in your face and you're like, yeah, and you're like, I suck, I'm shit, I can't, I don't deserve it. And that's what we do. So for me, this kind of connective selling is not just connecting to the client, it's connecting to yourself. And what are you telling yourself and what are you feeding yourself? Because you are what you eat, right? Whether it's the mental stuff that you put into your head or the crap that we put in our bodies, everything that we feed ourselves, it's going to affect us. And the longer you eat shit, you're going to feel miserable, you're going to look like garbage, you're going to have to let out your button, you're going to think in your head, oh my gosh, I shouldn't be eating that, and you're going to be eating it. And it's the same thing with work. And it's the same thing with connecting with people. So as we start to tell all of our stories to ourselves to keep us safe and secure, take a really good hard look at what your safety and security really looks like while you're stagnant. Does it actually match the picture of where you want to go, who you want to be? Right? And we do that to ourselves. So the sooner you start to recognize and realize what you're doing, then you're going to start to have these different aha moments. For me, a massive aha moment in this business was when I understood who I was. I took a disc profile test and it was in this office. I remember it's just like, what's this going to tell me? And then I read my disc profile and they nailed me to a T. And I'm like, that's impossible. I'm some unique person. How does anybody know me, right? How is that even possible? But it's possible. And the aha moment for me wasn't just that I figured myself out. What came later was, okay, now that I understand how I work and how I operate, which if you're familiar with how profiling works, if you look at my D, seriously, I mean, I don't even want to read contracts. Where do I sign, right? The C part of me, the organizational behavior, I don't even know where I put half my stuff. I really don't. It's just, so that's what I mean, right? When you get to know yourself, you start to think, okay, how am I showing up and how am I on paper? And what's really interesting, for me, the S part of my personality was kind of baffling for a moment because I'm so extroverted, right? But that 46 also tells me that I get sick and tired of talking to people at a certain point, and I don't want to be social. So I turn it on and off because I'm so social all the time. Even if I'm not going out to an event or doing anything like that, I am socializing, I am talking to people, I am getting into their world so that we can connect and we can create relationships. But if you look at it, okay, I'm massively extroverted, I love people. Introvert, not so much, but when I need to be task-oriented, forget it. That's why I have an assistant. If I didn't have Zesty in my life, I would have probably lost a lot of different things, you know, business, myself, my drive, all kinds of stuff. If I didn't have somebody keeping me in check, like I know my weakness, right? My tasks are my weaknesses. My calendar became my friend. But before I realized that, oh, I could use Google Calendar, right, to put things in there, now I'm hooked. If it's not in my calendar, it doesn't exist. And why are all of these things so important, right? If you really start to figure out how people operate, and this is such a cool slide, and I can send all of you the PowerPoint after, but you can start to see how people show up when they have these different personality types. If you want to work with me, if you're going to sell me something, just give me the juicy details that I need to understand so that I can connect to it, and then just give me the contract. I'm not going home for 4 days. I'm not going to review anything. It's just it works or it doesn't work, I'm going to sign. For those of you that have already worked with accountants and engineers and people that have a high C personality, it make you want to blow your brains out because they're going to highlight everything and red sticky and yellow note and come back and, oh, I forgot this. And you're like, what? Right? The same way Russ was going over the entire contract with you a moment ago, and you're probably, okay, I can fill this in, but what does it actually say? Right? Some of you will read it diligently, and some of you are like, I don't really give a shit. What are the highlights? What are the time frames? Where am I protected? What do they have to sign? I'm done. And there's everyone in between. And you have to understand who those people are, because without that, you can't serve your client. You can't serve your client because you can't connect to them. And if you can't connect to them, what is going to make you memorable? And the reality in this business with 21,000 or 26,000 agents, I don't know, I heard the two different numbers recently. It doesn't matter. It's 20+ thousand agents in San Diego. Why are they choosing you? For what reason? You have to know how to connect to those people, because you'll stop asking yourself for what reason once you understand what people are looking for. And people aren't looking for the same things you are. And that's the first thing you have to recognize. They don't care what you're looking for, because it's not about you. So when you recognize how people are showing up, and if you start, like, if you're hyper, just everything about analysis, and you're the C personality, and you give me all of that detailed breakdown to read through it, including precipitation that happened in the past 12 months, which I couldn't give a shit about, but some people would find fascinating, I'm going to be like, who is this person, right? There's absolutely no connection. I can't work with this person. You have to be there for them. You have to become them to a different degree. And as we start to move through this, right, you're showing up for them. Every time you can demonstrate your professionalism but be there for them the way they want you to show up, then they feel taken care of. And it's in the being taken care of that we actually then have a client. Because that's what we're ultimately looking for. If you go to your favorite restaurant, what are you expecting? Because most of us order one or maybe two, rarely two, types of dishes at our favorite restaurant. We go back there for what we know. And when we go back there for what we know, and if the experience changes, if the cook changed, if management changed, if the recipe changed, if they took something off the menu and it was your favorite restaurant, are you going back? Probably not. You might give it a second shot, but it's on its way out. So when you're taking care of people consistently the way they want to be taken care of, and you're showing up for them and connecting to them, then they feel protected. That's how trust forms. They feel like, oh, you've heard me. Okay, great. I don't need to go anywhere else. And that's why when you leave an impression on people in this business, because it's such an expensive business and a very dangerous endeavor, in my opinion, to go with an untrained professional because they may not know what they're doing to protect your investment of hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. Somebody deserves to know that you read the contract, that you know how to go about your profession, and that, oh, by the way, you know how to personally relate to them so that they can connect to you and you can become the hairdresser or bartender and they tell you all the crap that's going on in their life. Because ultimately that's what they do when you build a connection with anybody. But it just so happens that you're in a 6-figure or 7-figure transaction with people. Everybody wants to be taken care of. You have to know what that is. And so now we're just going to start on the business piece of all of this, right? But I can't stress the internal game enough. It's impossible to stress that enough. Because the sooner you start making it about them, then your business will transform. In all honesty, it will completely 180. Because now it's not about, oh, they need to really listen to me. I'm the professional. They should be just, why aren't they? That has nothing to do with it. You didn't discover enough. You didn't find out enough. You didn't relate enough. You didn't make yourself vulnerable and humanize the experience enough. That they get it that you've got the professional component, but God, I really like that person too. They're really an awesome person. And that's what people will talk about. They will actually say that. They will say, you know, Steve's great at real estate, but just talk to him. You'll like him. He'll hear you. That's what people say. He'll listen. He'll hear what you're saying. So as we start to move forward, this business, seriously, it's got a roadmap, right? You've got to identify a property. If you're working with a buyer, you have to get them under contract and you're going to close escrow. So we know that. But this isn't a straight line. And the reason it isn't a straight line is because, as we realize in real estate, there's getting them pre-qualified, there's the whole setup of the MLS process to find them the houses, there's identifying with what they love, then we have to get into offer situation, maybe it's a multiple offer situation, then we have to negotiate on their behalf, then we get an accepted offer, and I tell people, oh, we've just begun. They're like, what? I'm like, that's the starting line. Like, what? And so you have to also recognize where you are in the process. All of that work was the preparation to start. And now that you've started, now the timelines start, now the negotiation is actually going to start because you're probably going to renegotiate the property again once the disclosures come back and once the inspection comes back. And now how are you dealing with egos along the way and everything that's happening from all the parties that are involved and who's right and who's wrong and what does your buyer or seller want to do? What will they concede to? I mean, this thing is just like, there should be cliffs in this picture. I need something with cliffs, right? But for those of you, again, that don't know, and I say it openly, and Kyle always teases me about it, but role play is what changed my life, right? Because I got so used to having a qualifying conversation that I could say it backwards in my sleep, probably in my nightmares, probably in my best dreams. I can LP Mama you to death. But the only reason that I've learned LP Mama so backwards and forwards is so that I can find myself in any part of the conversation and know where I am, what I have to get back to, and how to drill deep. Location, oh, Oceanside. Okay, great. No. Why? Why Oceanside? Secondary areas? Sure. Why? Oh, that's within the boundaries. My husband commutes to Orange County. I'm down in Mira Mesa. We're looking for a central point. Awesome. I was talking to some other clients of mine yesterday. They want to sell a property they have in Solana Beach and buy coastal in Oceanside. And they're very, very analytical people. And one of their questions was schools, you know. I'm like, look, in that particular zip code, schools aren't great. You're going to have to do something else for schools. But it wasn't just Oceanside to be west of the 5. She's having baby fever. They want to have their first kid, and they want to still be coastal because they love being coastal. But 5-6 years from now, they're also thinking, because they're hyper analytical people, what's going to happen with schools? And I'm like, look, there's a massive unknown. She's in the medical profession. He's in IT. They both make a lot of money. Where's it going to go? And so one of the things I could defer to was, we don't know what's going to happen in 5 or 6 years. Most of your student loan, all your debt's going to be paid off. You guys can do whatever you want. And they're like, yeah, that's a good point. And instead of them hyper-focusing on schools, which is 5 or 6 years out, we gave them an option, right? So when you can dig into options with people, that's when you're still taking care of them. As opposed to, I just want to be in these cities, and not ask why. The price point, why? Some people are qualified for $2 million. They're like, I don't want to spend more than $700. And all of a sudden, what are you going to assess out of that person? They are hyper conservative. If anybody's going a third of what they're qualified for, what's the story? Ask yourself those questions. Because when you ask those questions to yourself, then you can ask them. And if you're on target, they're going to go bing, right? The light bulb goes off. This person is hearing me. And the more often you can be heard in a conversation, when somebody is sharing all of this information and you're analyzing it, you're breaking it down, then you're spitting it back out in your belief as to why. And if you're on target, they'll say, oh yeah, that's exactly right. Or they're like, well, it's kind of it. I'm like, oh, okay, so what else is important? Why are you doing this? And let them talk. And people will tell you everything. And this is all you have to know. Location, price, mortgage, agent. Then you set the appointment. You only have to know 5 things in this business to have a real conversation. And how many of you are actively on role play? Please keep your hands up. Let me see again. Okay. And I was on for years. So I don't know what your fucking excuses are, but why aren't you, right? And how polished are you when you're on there? I teach people how to do this shit now because I've been on so much and I made so many calls. And that's why I got to the position that I'm in, because I focus on how to connect. And I don't say that from an egotistical standpoint whatsoever. I just did the work. So what's stopping you? Again, back to that internal story. So just ask yourself that question. I'm not the parent that's like disciplining you. I'm just saying that if you have these dreams, you're never going to get to them if you don't do the work. But the reason you don't do the work is because you haven't dug into your why deep enough as to why not. Forget the why, it's why not. So rapport building techniques, you know, the things that I've talked about before, which are the mirror and matching, right? So right now I'm talking at a much more rapid pace than I normally talk at. For those of you that know me, I like to talk a lot slower. I just like to, you know, I don't like to force myself. If I was in New York, I'd still be the slow walker in the street, even if I lived there for years, unless I have to get somewhere quickly, right? So what are my patterns? What are my habits? How do I show up? And then again, it's not about me anymore. So if somebody's talking really slow and light, I'll be talking really slow and light. If they're going to be swearing, I'm going to be swearing. If they're going to be like gesturing and forceful and damn, yeah, and I'm going to be doing that, right? I have to adapt to them because in such a short period, have you ever asked yourself how you really connect with people super quick? Like for those of you that get a lead online and the next thing you know you have an appointment, how did that happen? If you ask yourself, it ain't magic. How did it happen? And I want that to just kind of like resonate for a second, because it wasn't because you just asked a series of questions. Why did they like you? Why did they choose you? They haven't even seen you. They haven't met you. They have nothing about any information that has to do with you, yet you have the appointment. Ask yourself these questions. How were you showing up that you might not even been like paying attention to? And I guarantee you, probably less than 5% of you actually analyze your conversations after they're done. right? What worked, what didn't work, why, how did this resonate? Oh, that was cool, or oh, I should have never said that. I do that all the time. I'm like, why did I say that? It still happens to me. Like, don't think just because you get to a certain level that you're always perfect. All you are is aware. That's all that happens, is there's an awareness. That awareness is what can save you or what can tank you if you want to keep going into the destruction. But at least you know you're doing it, right? And words are things. So all of you are lenders first and foremost. Somebody says, I've got a 560 credit score, I suck, right? And you can go, you know what, you really do suck. Yeah, you're 560. Or you can be like, look, shit happens in life. You're here. It doesn't matter anymore. The real thing is you want to buy a house, correct? Yeah, I really, and whatever the story is for why. And now you're going to help them build their self-esteem back. First of all, they probably don't have a partner, right, in a great lender that's going to walk them through the process. Their mindset is already one of defeat. So you're now their champion, right? I've got an amazing credit repair person. Tell me how you got here. Now they share their story, they're opening up, they're humanizing the experience, everything's starting to happen, and now they're really becoming vulnerable. Don't take advantage of that vulnerability. Medical expenses, my mom died, we paid for everything. Oh my God, that was so admirable of you, and that got you here? Yeah. I'm like, the system sucks, doesn't it? Yeah. Now what, right? Look what I just did in that conversation. I validated that they did a great thing and they put themselves in a horrible situation, but the horrible situation wasn't first and foremost in their brain. What was first and foremost was, I got to take care of my mom. And now I put myself in a situation where I've kind of ruined stuff for myself. Be their champion, right? And then when you pump them up, even if they can't buy for 2 years, do you think that they might refer you? Right? You don't know what somebody's story is. They don't have to be some piece of transactional meat in front of you. They just have to be a human being that gets to tell their story to someone that they feel they can open up to. And then once they do that, you're memorable. You are. You become someone that they can talk about. And if you stay in front of them long enough, not commission breath, not the, hey, are you ready to buy that house today? I heard you go, we did a rapid credit rescore, you're good, right? No. You just keep the relationship going, and guess what they're going to say to you? Hey, I'm ready. They'll call you, I'm ready. You're like, what? That's faster than I thought. No, I did all this stuff that you talked about, and we got some blah, 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 and I call credit. We're ready. I'm like, awesome, let's go. Did you hear my tone? Right? So learning how to use your tonality, I'm so big on that. Like, as I sit here right now, I know my cadence because I've practiced so much, right? I've practiced so much. And if you think about it for a second, I just want to make a correlation to, for all of you that know how much Kyle puts into his business. Systems, he's blasting shit everywhere. He's like a public figure in Santee. He signs autographs for little children in ice cream parlor shops, right? Maybe not, right? But I didn't do any of that. And I beat him in production last year without a machine. And the reason that that happened was because I so hyper-focused on my relationships that I have. And I nurture them, not to death, but nurture them where we're working together, right? There's nothing about what I'm doing that's distancing. I'm genuinely interested in their lives. I'm genuinely interested in their goals. I'm genuinely interested in using my Rolodex of people and connections to move them forward. And I don't ask them for anything in return. And I'm not saying that's what Kyle does or doesn't do. Kyle has a machine, and it's harder for him to be as connected, maybe, as where I am with different sources that I've tapped into that can refer me, right? But you've got a machine, you've got an individual with an assistant. And I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm just saying that they both work. But again, humanizing the experience and connecting to people in a very authentic way, in the words that we use and the things that we say and how we communicate with people, not about me, but it's a we mentality, or you. Forget we for a second, or you, right? You don't have to get everything out of something just because you do something. And when you have that mindset, everything just changes. And everything is about painting them a picture, right? So we don't just buy things like I'm going to buy a new car. You can go build a car now based on everything that you've ever dreamed of with colors and floor mats and your flares and your turbocharger or whatever. You can paint your own picture, right, if you're a consumer with certain things. But without that online tech, when it's actually just human-to-human relationships, conversations, contact, discovery, you're going to show them how everything is going to turn out. Even though they can't visualize it, if I give you a simple exercise of a lemon, right, and all of you just imagine yourself in front of a lemon tree that's blooming, and you can smell the citrus in the air, and then you walk up to that lemon tree, and there's one big, fat, juicy lemon that's hanging there, and you grab it. And when you grab it, you already see like that mist that just comes out of the skin, and you put it right up to your mouth, and you smell it. And you can smell the citrus. And then you take a big bite into the rind, if you're that daring, right? But what just happened in every single one of your mouths is you probably started to salivate. And you started to salivate because the mind does things even though those things aren't there. And that's just the way we operate. You can't stop or help what the subconscious does. So when you paint people a picture of positivity, of future end games, of what you're going to do to help them accomplish certain things, of that party after they move in that you're going to throw, of this is going to be a badass house, oh, this is your first house, this is a massive celebration, oh, and by the way, you're the first person in your family to ever buy a house, holy shit, what an accomplishment. Just like the people that you hear, I'm the first person that went to college in my family, and you talk to those people and they're glowing, they're elevated. They've done something that most of their family never thought could happen, and they all talk shit about it for years except for that person that emerged out of their shell. And that's you. So this isn't just paint a picture for them, paint a picture for yourself and relate your own emotional components, content, what you want to it. Because if you can dream it, except I'm not going to Mars, I'd like to, but within reason, you can do it. But you have to be able to visualize it. And then the biggest thing that I really like to focus on, for me, this was the magic nugget, this was the cherry on the top for everything, is that because I became so proficient in understanding my acronym, right, LP Mama, that I can mirror and match, that I can use language that connects us, then I could just pay attention to what my scenery looked like. As we're going through, whether you know it or not, I am studying every single one of you just to know. So we've got one guy behind Mike that's yawned a couple times, Mike yawned once, but other than that, everyone's engaged, right? So I have to make sure that I'm in tune with my audience. So you better believe I'm paying attention to every single one of you. I'm not up here just so I could talk. I'm making sure that what I'm talking about is connecting to you. Because if you're not engaging me, if you're not looking at me, and the way you can tell true engagement is you hardly blink, you don't really move away at all, your eyes become a little bit wider, and you nod your head in agreement when certain things resonate to you. That's the simplest clue for knowing if you have somebody. And I wanted to share that with you because as Russell's nodding his head yes, it's the same thing when people are doing the no, you mean nothing to me. They're looking away, they're looking at their watch, they're bouncing their legs up and down. If somebody attractive walks by, they're watching that person. As you're like making key points and you come back to them and they're like, huh? Yeah. You know, they don't even know where you're at in the conversation. What happened, right? And whether you have the guts to stop the conversation or not, I do every single time. I'm like, where'd I lose you? They're like, what? I'm like, what happened? They're like, what are you talking about? I've been listening to it the whole time. I'm like, no, you haven't. I'm like, something happened or something I said, or I don't know if there's something going on internally, but what's going on? Get them to open up. Because if you don't get them back on track, you're finished. As soon as that appointment is concluded, you're done. There is no memorable. There was just 30 minutes or whatever that person looks at as a waste of time. They're not excited to hear from you again. They might not even remember your name. Hey, it's Steve calling. Steve who? Remember the guy you had lunch with that you didn't pay attention to? Oh, yeah. Right? But those are so important. Those are so important because you have the ability to have a barometer that you don't even pay attention to. And it's really in their physiology. And if you see their face kind of grimace or their eyes move back or they pull back for a second or their body turns away or they have a sharp intake of breath, something got triggered that wasn't right, where they're engaged. Use their physiology to be your meter of success or having to just get them back so that you can have success. But if you're not using that barometer, if you're not paying attention to body language, you're missing like the most massive piece of everything, because you've probably heard 7% are the words that we say in communication. 93% is everything that's nonverbal or tonality, the way people are saying things. Because I could be like, hey, Mike, and then everyone's like, oh, what am I hitting on Mike? Versus, hey, Mike, where I could say the same thing twice, and the way I say the same words have a different meaning. Don't get any thoughts about the first way that I said it.
Too late.
Right? So look at those cues as clues. And I want you to be an investigator. Because if you're an investigator, now you're actually in tune. You are now paying attention to their physiology. And the reason that I'm actually pointing this out on a separate slide is because you're detectives, right? We are detectives. Either we have all the clues, we know where to go, and we're going to figure everything out, or we have no idea what on earth we're doing. And that's part of the reason that you are not memorable by the time the presentation has been concluded. So I want to talk about some physiology. So we're all engaged right now, right? Is this sad? Absolutely it's sad. Right? Is this really happy? Absolutely not really happy. Scared? Probably not. Can't wait to hear what you say. She looks really excited. Tired? No. So what I want to talk about with those is that the first one is so obvious because we were looking at the screen and that person was sad. But if you're not paying attention to those physiological cues, which are so blatant because I have your attention, that's actually what's going on in front of you in a client meeting. And if you're not paying attention to any of that, what have you seriously missed? It's everything. Everything is in what they're telling you externally. Because how many of you sometimes sit in on meetings where you don't say a word, but in your head you're like, what the hell am I doing here? This sucks. When is this over? Right? This is garbage.
Hopefully not this one.
I hope so. Right? That would stink. But I'm trying to connect you to being an investigator in that way so that you can pay attention to that. I'm trying to make you understand your internal game is your own success barometer. Like everything that you tell yourself, everything is where you're going to go or where you're not going. And then once you've got your internal game and you can pay attention to it, then you master those parts of the acronym and knowing the empowering language and knowing that you have to mirror and match. And you can pay attention to physiology so that those cues are actual clues for you. And then what are you doing to get to the next level, right? So for me, role play changed everything. This morning I went for a 45-minute walk and I listened to Impact Theory, Tom Bilyeu with this guy. I have to remember his name, but I listened to something amazing. And the reason I was so floored by it was it talks about the way the brain works and the mind works. So again, totally on point with what I love. I'm perfect at doing these things all of the time. You know, I'm really like showing up most of the time. I want to be better and I am working towards being better. I'm still human. I still have my garbage that I work on, but I'm aware, right? But I'm doing things that will always move my needle, and maybe my needle is past most people's because I've done so much work. But the reality is the people that do the work will continue to move their own needle. And what you'll find about most people is most people don't do any work. It's Wednesday, you know? So what does Wednesday mean? Oh, it's hump day. I'm like, what does that mean? It's Friday. So what are you going to do? Nothing, right? And if that's life for you, cool. But that's not my life. And I don't think all of you are attending this meeting or in this office or being challenged so that you can just sit there and go, it's so amazing, it's Wednesday. I don't think that's why you're here. So what are you doing on that daily basis? And again, for me, I've told you all I have 3 coaches, right? So I have a real estate coach, I have a life coach, and I have a fitness coach because every one of those people kicks my ass to a degree that I wouldn't allow myself to have my ass kicked if I did it myself. So you need to be able to stretch. And that doesn't necessarily mean you always have to hire somebody, but have somebody in your world that will push you and won't take your BS. Have an accountability partner, you know, match up here, but do it for real. You don't always have to spend money, but you do need something or someone, whether that's Mike, right, as the coach in the office, and whether you're reaching out and doing that or not. And if you're not, why not? And be honest with yourself. If you created these vision boards, which we did in our December meeting, and you're like, yeah, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, it's so awesome. And it's like, what have you done? Well, nothing. So why are you bullshitting yourself? What do you want? And how are you anchoring that feeling or that emotion or that future to what's going to push you through everything? And what's interesting is that impact theory that I listened to this morning, I always thought, it was around 3.5 weeks to form a new habit. Well, I heard today it could be anywhere from right around 66 days to 365. I'm like, that sucks, it got longer. Right? But I'm 47 now, not the oldest guy in the room, thank you. And, seriously, right? Or you too? But what's a year? What's a year for the next 40? Right? It's just all how we break things down into the ridiculous. And if you take mortgage lenders sometimes, they'll take a payment and they'll break it down to a daily rate. So you can look at a daily rate. So you break it down to the ridiculous so it doesn't seem so massively daunting. And that's the other thing, is we'll look at the end. I'm going to run a marathon. I'm going to run 26 point whatever miles, whatever. Right, exactly, right? It's actually, it's longer than 26.2 because we don't do every angle cut, which I learned in a half marathon, which really pissed me off. It was more like 13 point something. I was just like, I thought it was supposed to be 13.1. Right? But what are you doing? Right? And this Tom Cruise one is help me, help you, right? And I'm not sitting here saying, hey, I'm just your coach. You have a lot of resources over here, but be okay being vulnerable. Be okay talking about your bullshit, because we all have it. And the sooner you recognize that you're human like every one of us, and just because I'm here and I'm talking, I'm not fucking perfect. I go through my BS. I have my own internal dialogue, but I'm aware of it. That's the only difference. That's the only thing that changes people, is an awareness. And what you choose to do once you're aware. And more often than not, through my awareness, I will self-correct and I will get back on path a lot quicker than most because I've done the work. That's it, right? So this is a survey, if you guys want to go there or not, just rate performance for me, which I would be most grateful for. It's, I think Zesty changed it. Before it was case sensitive with the Steve, it was a capital S and a capital W if it doesn't show up. But I want feedback. I'm not just here to serve you in the sense of I want to give information to you. I am here because I want to learn from you about what worked in my presentation and what didn't. I'm being vulnerable to you. So this isn't just, hey, a Steve thing and follow what Steve does or follow what Kyle does or follow what so-and-so does. That's what we do. That's us. I have a different story than you. My story's mine, right? You don't have to want to be like anybody else. What you have to want to be is someone who wants more and you're willing to do what's necessary in order to achieve. And what does it take? And it takes a lot of work. I'm not going to shit you, It's going to take work. But seriously, what comes easy? And if it was that easy, wouldn't you question it? You'd be like, this is too good to be true. This doesn't really work. And that's what we all do when something comes too easy. And only through the struggle do you have experiences that you can now go back and talk about or share. Or when I did my first and only half marathon ever, right? We got to talk about how we ran through it. I was with Jason, with Kyle. We got to sit around. We got to bullshit about it. We all got to have our medals. We finished. And we got to talk about the struggle, right? That's next level. Talking about the struggle is real because it's that part that elevates you. If everything was so easy, we would respect nothing. If I just keep giving my son things, he's going to respect nothing. And I keep having these challenges and battles with him. He's 8 years old and he knows so much and he's already going on 26 and this and that and he's made some of his own money and he's bought his own stuff and it's mine. Right? But I can't just talk to my son like, you're bad, you got to listen, you got to do this. I have to understand where my son's coming from. So it's that external game, it's that internal game, and it's about connecting. And it's not just connecting to that person in front of you, it's connecting to yourself. So that's what I want to leave you with. This sales stuff that I'm talking about is not sales at all. It's just about understanding how to connect to yourself and how to connect to others, and that the process, especially if you're in service, is not about you. Actually, you're the last person it has anything to do with. And if you do a great job, you'll be rewarded. both by concluding the transaction, so you'll get a sense of satisfaction. You'll also receive some sort of a commission check. And if you do your job right, you're also probably going to gain a friendship, and you're going to gain referrals. And people are going to open opportunities and doors for you if they know what you do and if they know who you are, right? When I tell people I do stuff, then people are like, hey, would you want to speak at so-and-so and do this? I'm like, thank you, and be grateful for what you receive. So with that, I'll leave you guys. But thank you so much for going through this and open up for questions. Yes, Jason?
So I see you speak quite a bit. You always get better. So what I noticed today is your tonality. You definitely had more higher and lowers than just kind of being the same, the same thing. And I saw your eyes. You connected with everybody in the room, like you mentioned. It was amazing. So thank you for stepping up and doing it. It's been a pleasure continuing to see you grow, and I can't wait to see what you do for the next 5 years.
Thank you, Jason.
Anybody have any questions for me? Yes.
Do you have any classes, groups, or books that you recommend for to tap into this communication?
Absolutely. There's a book that blew my mind called The Four Agreements. Has anybody read that book?
Yeah.
Right? Can anyone talk about that book for a second other than me?
It talks about being impeccable with your words, and you do what you say you're going to do. Right off the top of my head, I can't think of it. That's the one that always stuck with me.
Yep.
That you say you're going to do something, do it.
Do it.
Another one is do your best, whatever you do it 100%. The other one is don't make assumptions. So, I mean, and that relates so much to what we do is, oh, it seems like this person isn't interested. Oh, it seems that this is, this is this. But you don't know what anyone else is thinking. You can gauge them,
Yep.
and that's an incredibly important tool, but you might be wrong on some things. So don't let that negativity in your head get in your way, and don't make all those assumptions that very well likely could be wrong.
So that's the first thing I would do is read that book, because the very beginning I was like, what is this? It didn't really get into the meat right away. So I was like, what is it? I gave it a chance. I was like, oh my gosh, just blew my brains out. But the other thing is start to figure out what your daily routine looks like and try to stick to it, right? Because I'm still guilty. I'm still guilty with that. But I'm like, I'm going to do that tomorrow, or I'm going to do this, or I'll get back to it and not let off. So the sooner you can start to create new habits for yourself, the sooner your brain starts to learn. You'll build more neural pathways. You'll start to expand the way your mind is thinking. Because at about 25 years old, our brain starts to harden, and it's a lot more difficult for us to incorporate new habits into our life. And that's why, New Year's resolution, sure, I'll start tomorrow. It's December 31st, January, good luck, right? If you're not doing the work in order to prepare yourself for the struggle that you're going to have because you want to default and go back to your old ways. So I think Jim Rohn used to say, eat an apple a day. If you can't even eat an apple a day, what else can you, what can you do, right? Just eat an apple a day. And so just start with very simple things to start to incorporate learning new habits and incorporating new ways of being, so that your brain starts to become more malleable, more, right? And pliable, malleable, whatever word, where it becomes like Play-Doh again. You can start to reshape it. And when you start doing that, then your brain's open to learning and connecting and building new neural pathways. And that's the way we start to expand, because in essence, we want to default to the bullshit that we know because it's easy, even if it's destructive. Try to incorporate new habits and keep reading things that expand your mind, because the more often you recognize that anyone can do it, like they weren't that special, they weren't different, and we're all the same. Right? The brain is the same for everybody, but what makes them different? And it's usually their ability to push past certain things instead of, I'll just give into this. Yes?
I know you like Tom Bilyeu a lot.
Yeah.
Who else would you recommend, that blows your mind like him? Because I like Tom Bilyeu too.
So Simon Sinek has some pretty cool stuff. John Maxwell talks about some pretty cool stuff. I used to listen to Tony Robbins a lot. I still like his stuff, but he talks about state. Just get into state, get into state, get into state. But it takes work before you have to learn how to get into state. So I think there's a lot of internal work that needs to be done before you figure out how to get into state. And then just read books that expand your brain as far as what can happen, like The Magic of Thinking Big, things like that you can start to daydream about different things. and just put that out there so your brain, your reticular activating system, just how you start to focus on things, and all of a sudden you're starting to notice more. But also, I think one of the biggest takeaways I ever really put into action was, who are your 5 closest friends? Who are the people that you hang out with? And in all honesty, if you're just sticking with people that you're the leader of them, you're in the wrong spot, because they're never going to help you move. When you get into rooms where people just blow your brains out and you're like, oh my God, I could never be, that's where you want to stay. Because eventually you will become, and if you don't become to that level, you will stretch yourself past the level that you were with that other group. And it's a pretty rough transition, because sometimes you have to let people go. I had to let somebody go here that I was friends with early on. Not that I never answered their call, but they're not my first phone call. They're not even my 80th phone call, right? There are people that are moving my needle, and I like hanging out with them, and we talk about stuff that will expand me, versus, to help them get a raise at one point. I'm like, let me help you write a letter to help you talk to your boss to get a raise. That's not the room I want to be in. So
I appreciate that.
yeah. Anything else? Yes?
I like how all your slides have your little dash there, little colors splash through your brand.
That's my system. So
Oh.
it has nothing to do with it.
Well, it's good. So along those lines, what would you say? Suppose you're dealing with a seller and they're somewhat sophisticated in regards to buying and selling things, and they say, Steve, what is your unique selling proposition, or what are the things? What's your mantra, your brand, or what are a couple key elements that make you you? What would you say?
I tell them 2 things. I work extremely hard at understanding this profession so that I can understand how to serve you through different scenarios. And I'm here for you. I'm not here for me. I'm here to bring everything that I have to understand what you're after, so that I can serve what's most important to you in this process. And that's all I'm here for. I'm not here for myself. And when you can take yourself out of the equation and make it about them, and express that you are a professional in your field, and demonstrate some of your accolades through non-egotistical ways of demonstrating, oh, I'm number 1, I'm top of, who gives a shit? It's just like, I've traditionally been in the top tiers in performers in real estate across the country, and I'm only telling you that because I work extremely hard to bring as much knowledge and professionalism to this room for you at this moment. So you tell me, what are you really focused on? Because I'm really here to understand how to take care of you. And that's it. I don't go into too much more, because there isn't anything else, really. It's just, I know my craft, what do you need? And oh, by the way, it happens to be in the real estate space, so I can help you with that, right?
I'm looking for an agent that likes dogs.
Just say, I used to have a dog. I didn't get one because my last one died and it was really painful, but I still love dogs. It just can't go back to the attachment, right? Right? But how would that connect with you if I said that? Seriously, I have a dog, I have a cat.
His dog used to come to the meeting every
Yeah.
week to see that. And I
Yeah.
shared with that.
But if you knew they were a dog lover and you said, ugh, if you even did that for a second, you're done. So that's what I mean, that barometer, like, where are they coming from? So that even if you hate dogs because you got bit and you have an aversion and you actually got rabies because the dog that bit you was in Mexico and you got an infection, and whatever your story is, you're not carrying that story into that room and they're like, how do you feel about dogs? Ugh, keep them away from me. Just like you could say something like, I wish I wasn't allergic. I'm allergic. I wish I could have one because they're amazing. But every time I go around a dog, I just, it's really tough for me. So, but I wish I could. You don't have to lie, like whatever the story is, but if there's an aversion to something that somebody loves, if someone is a Trump lover or a this lover or a that lover, and they're like, how do you feel about the government? I'm like, oh, I'm Canadian. I'm totally neutral. Don't ask me that question. I'm like, okay, right? Just stay out of it. Don't put yourself in conflict. So if things are coming to you that could actually create conflict, steer clear. Find a way to give a non-answer that still makes you look respectable. Anything else? Thank you guys so much.